Welcome to Silver Lake State Park.
Silver Lake State Park is in northwest Michigan, closest to the very small town of Mears, M-E-A-R-S, if you're looking it up for some reason. It sits on Lake Michigan, and it surrounds Silver Lake.
The park itself is really sort of divided into three sections. You've got the campground and day use area, which are kind of together. You've got the Little Sable lighthouse, which is a couple miles down the road. And then you have the park's most famous feature, which is the ORV scramble area.
Well, and the sand dunes that we're going to show you some of what we did, because we spent a good part of today out there playing around. Jessie was driving her Jeep around out there having a lot of fun. And I think you said originally this was Sand Dunes State Park.
Silver Lake State Park was originally two different state parks, Sand Dunes State Park and Silver Lake State Park. And that's because it was donated into two separate parcels. The first section, the smallest 40-acre section where the campground sits, was donated by Carrie Mears, who is the daughter of Charles Mears, who Mears State Park is named after, a big lumber baron in Michigan and owned huge tracts of land in Michigan. And so the family at different points in time bequeathed their land to the state. And then in like the 1940s, the federal government turned over a huge section of the land, which is more where the scramble area and the lighthouse is, to the state. And so the additional acreage became Sand Dune State Park. And then in about 1950, they combined all the parts and made it Silver Lake State Park. So if you're not confused by now, I mean, it took me a little bit of history to try to figure out pieces and when, but essentially those two different parks became one. And so now we have this awesome, just around 3,000 acre total state park at Silver Lake.
And all the parks combined give you a lot of different things to do for individuals, couples, families. You could really spend a nice summer weekend, week, whatever here, although it's going to be busy in the summer. Just be aware of that.
This is probably one of the busiest ones for northern Michigan. It's it's a really popular place.
But there's a lot of different things to do, and it's because of the three separate parts. The campground is actually in two parts itself, on opposite sides of the road. The two loops seem relatively similar in terms of number of trees, types of sites. I would note that because of the geography here and the terrain with the sand dunes and area and everything, you got to watch. Some of your sites are going to be sloped pretty well. Others are going to require a little bit of leveling. If you can find high ground, it seems to level out.
And if you're here during a hard rain, there are going to be a few sites that are going to be pretty flooded and muddy. We actually ended up having to change sites because we got here in a thunderstorm and it was raining pretty hard. Went to pull into our site after dark and realized it was a puddle. Luckily, because we're here in the off season, we were able to move sites really easily, which you wouldn't necessarily be able to do in the summer because this is a park that on the weekends and holidays, it is going to be packed to the max.
Yeah, we pulled in last night, and I knew we had a campsite on the lake. I didn't realize we were literally in a lake, which is what would have happened. So we changed sites, and we found one of those high ground sites. It was nice and level. I didn't have to use any blocks. And the ranger commented that if we got flooded on this site, that he'd probably be evacuating the entire campground anyway. So even if it's a heavy rain, there are sites that are still high and dry.
You do bring up a good point that there are a handful of sites that are right on Silver Lake. So to explain this better, you've got Lake Michigan, and then you've got the dunes area where there's scramble areas and you can just walk up on the dunes and see Lake Michigan. And then you have Silver Lake itself, which is an inland lake. And then the town of Silver Lake sort of surrounds that. And so the state park sits on the eastern boundary of Silver Lake, whereas the dunes are on the west boundary of Silver Lake. So about 10 or 15 campsites have a really nice view of Silver Lake, not Lake Michigan. I just wanted to make that clear.
The campground has a lot of different things in it, too. There's a boat launch here for Silver Lake. There is a little bit of a day use area. There is a little playscape that you had some fun on.
Yeah, that's a nice little playscape there. It's a different kind of playscape than we'd seen before. It was more of a spider web type crawling contraption as opposed to the more rubber plastic bridges and walkways that we usually see.
So it is a nice pair of campgrounds, and if you really just stayed at the campground, you'd have things to do. There's actually a beach on Silver Lake, and there's some pavilion areas there and benches, that kind of thing. So you could just kind of hang out here if you really wanted to.
I think this would be a nice place to hang out. You've got a 15-day camp limit at all the state parks before you'd have to leave. So, I mean, you could spend 2 weeks here. The town of Silver Lake is a cute little tourist town. There's not as much to do here as we've seen at some of the larger coastal cities, but you've got a handful of restaurants, some ice cream shops. If you don't have your own ORV, Macwood Dune Rides is happy to take you out on their dune buggies. They're sort of like group wagon dune buggy kind of contraptions, and so they'll take you out there, and that's just a fun thing to do. I mean, it's not quite as cool as going out and doing it yourself, but again, if you don't have your own way out there, it's also good for little kids just because it's a lower key type ride out on the dunes.
There are a number of places in town here that rent things for you to, you know, whether it's quads or kind of the side-by-sides that are real popular now. So there's different ways to do that. There's plenty of places in town to get equipment if you need it to get out on the sand dunes, like the flag that's required, that kind of thing.
If you want to go off-roading in Michigan, be that with a full-size vehicle like a Jeep Wrangler or more of an ATV or side-by-side, you have to have an ORV sticker. There's two different styles of ORV routes and trails in Michigan, and so depending on where you're going to go, you either have to have a regular ORV sticker or you have to have an ORV trail sticker. Actually, you really need to better have both because you just never know where you're going to end up. You might find yourself on a trail, you might find yourself on a route, you might find yourself in one of the scramble areas. So just get your sticker and make sure you're legal no matter where you're going.
As you said, lots of places to eat. I would know we're here, in mid-October?
Yeah.
It's the end of the season for sure. Macwoods is closed.
Whippy Dip is closed.
I didn't see a single ice cream shop that was still open, so sorry about that. We came too late for those. But yeah, I mean, there was actually quite a few people camping here still, and the dunes that we were out on today were packed by midday.
And I have to say packed, it's sort of probably a relative term, although one of the park rangers I spoke to said he thinks the park is more busy today than on a weekday during the summer. Now, weekends are a whole nother story, and there's really no limit to the number of ORVs they will let out into the scramble area at one time. So you just have to know that in advance, plan early to get in line, to get there out there early. But otherwise, I think, yeah, there's a lot to do here in the area.
Just a couple miles down the road from the campground is the Little Sable lighthouse. 1847, I think I saw on the door. That's been there for a really long time. It's a really cool brick lighthouse that's there with some really nice views, and there's a good parking area there to just kind of go out and check it out. There is a sidewalk that seemed ADA compliant all the way out to the lighthouse. Not today with the wind that's been blowing around.
Yeah, the sand had pretty much covered it.
The sand had covered it, and I think because it's not as busy a time of year, they're not keeping up with it as much in terms of keeping that cleaned off. But that's a really nice drive out there. It's not very far, and it's a great place to just kind of hang out, see Lake Michigan, and check out a really cool old lighthouse.
But really the big thing here at Silver Lake State Park is the ORV area. People come from all over the world to check this place out. It's the only sand dunes east of the Mississippi that you can take your personal vehicles out onto. And so you'll see everything from dirt bikes and dune buggies to side-by-sides, Jeep Wranglers, Suburbans, and pretty much any type of vehicle that somebody has been able to modify with big tires and suspensions to get out there on the dunes. It's just a great place to play around.
It is a lot of fun out on the dunes. You mentioned all the modified vehicles, and it's cool to see what people have been able to do to make themselves sort of sand trucks or, you know, dune buggies and rails and do all kinds of things that are a lot of fun out there and making up some of the big hills. I would point out though, I mean, we went out on your Jeep today, and it's a stock Jeep. It's got a little beefier tires on it, but it's not nothing else has really been done to it. And we did just fine. Now there are certain hills we didn't want to try.
And by we, I was driving, just point that out.
Yeah,
so
you drove all day and you did really well. And it's actually one of the big hills there. You've done that before in that Jeep. The wind conditions today and the sand conditions just didn't feel right for us, so you didn't try it. I didn't think we should try it, so we didn't do it.
We're sitting at the base of Test Hill watching all the extreme crazies try to crest the hill. I've done this before, so it's not that I can, but given the conditions today, I don't think I'm going to risk and try it. It's essentially the biggest hill in the park. It's all one-way directional, and it's super steep. The bigger issue today is we're facing about a 20-30 mile an hour wind that is coming straight at us, so getting your momentum up and over that dune is going to be a challenge. We've already watched a number of people get stuck, get halfway up, back down, and it's not something I really want to risk today because that's just not going to be a good situation. There's plenty of ways to have fun in this place though. There's just lots of little bumpy hills, there's some flatland scramble areas, there's some water holes, there's down by the Lake Michigan, and it's just a good place to have fun. You can go around and around as many times as you want. You really just need to follow the directional signs so that you are going in the correct order, that you don't crest over a hill and hit somebody.
Everybody's required to have a really tall flag so that you can see each other. But it's just a lot of fun out here. People come to Silver Lake because it's just a great place to get out with your ORV, no matter what type of ORV it is, and just have a good day on the dunes.
One of the secrets to getting around on the sand dunes is really low tire pressure. People don't realize how low it needs to be. The sign says 15 to 18 PSI maximum. Most people tell you to do like 12 or 15. It's super low. The trick then is, how do you get them aired back up again when you're done? Kudos to the state. DNR has put a welcome center here near the sand dunes, and they have over a dozen air hose stations, so everybody can line up probably in the summer. But right now it's not too busy. It's great to have that air available here. It's a super fast system and just really good idea to have these. It is somewhat surreal being out there, though, because we are always talking about how sensitive the dunes are and they're environmentally protected and don't walk on them and don't damage them. And everybody's out there driving around on the sand dunes. But these things are huge. They're moving around all the time on their own. And it's just a really neat experience to actually get out there and experience it in that way.
I think because this is sort of a very secluded area just for the ORV scramble area, it is protected. And there are a few signs that say erosion control in process. So sometimes they'll put up fences or change the area just a little bit so that if they need to redo a section, it's not going to be hindrance to where the ORVs are, but it's also going to protect the dunes and the dune grass as well. But by limiting it to a very specific area, it allows us to go out there and have a lot of fun, enjoy the beauty of it, but yet still protect the rest of the coastal area.
And if being out there in a vehicle isn't for you, there is actually a pedestrian area. You can hike in to climb up and see the dunes on foot. So that's something cool to consider doing too.
And those are some really tall dunes. Plus you'd get a good view of the ORVs hanging out there, but just as well as Lake Michigan too. So I'd consider just doing the hike sometime as well.
So Silver Lake State Park clearly offers a lot of different things to do. There's camping, there's boating, there's hiking, there's the ORV scramble and dune area. There's the lighthouse if you want to go sightseeing and see that. Just, there's a lot, and you could spend days or a week here very easily.
I would recommend, if you're going to the ORV scramble area, to either come during the weekdays or in the off season, just because it does get a little hectic out there. It can be a little nerve-wracking and hairy when you come over the hill and you might meet somebody else. But it's just a really great area to hang out in. And there's other stuff to do in town. There's go-kart rides and just little things for the kids to do in the area. So I think this would be a really nice place to come. And actually, if you have 2 weeks, come hang out in this area, just because there's a lot going on here.
So think about coming out to Silver Lake and picking one of the things to do, or do them all. Do them all. Why not? Keep on trekking.
And we'll see you out there.